What's up, everyone? Welcome to the One Room Mushroom Farm. This is my tiny, cramped, but very usable room in my attic of my house. And I'm planning on growing mushrooms up here for gourmet purposes only. And I just wanted to take a minute to go through and show everybody what I've been doing. And if anybody's interested, stick along and we'll talk about a little bit about liquid culture. We'll talk a little bit about grain spawn. We'll talk a little bit about Petri dishes and moving over agar transfers. And I'll just do a little bit of a closer look with what I've set up here and what I've been doing. So I started out with about 8 strains of oyster mushroom, which were bought from liquidfungi.com. They were liquid culture syringes that I inoculated, each one 3 jars of liquid culture that I created myself. I made myself, I should say. I inoculated 3 Petri dishes for each one. And then I also had inoculated 1 grain jar like this for each strain that I purchased. This is a patty straw. Right now it's a Pohu oyster mushroom. And all those jars have since been transferred out to these blocks up here. Everything but the last 4 blocks here came from these little grain jars, which came from liquid culture syringes. And like I said, I made all of that in one go. So I took 8 different types of syringes, and for each one, 3 jars liquid culture, 1 grain jar, and 3 Petri dishes. You know, all at the same time. Took a couple hours, actually like 3 or 4 hours. And I would never recommend doing that all at one time to anybody. It's just a lot of work. It was the first time I'd done any of mycology work. First time I'd used my flow hood. It was pretty hard, but I got through it. Got away with very little contamination. I only had one issue with contamination, which was mostly my fault. You see, I had taken 2 of the strains, which was a tarragon strain and a Korean oyster strain. They're both oysters. And I had basically gotten a little bit eager, and I set up... Start stirring these while I'm talking here. You know, what we're really looking for in this liquid is that the liquid itself is clear. So if you look through that, if you can see like the magnification effect, the refraction going through, and you can still see the flow hood through that liquid. If this was contaminated here, it would just be cloudy, like you wouldn't even be able to see the shapes of the fins of this flow hood through that liquid. And then obviously you have your mycelium growing, which since it's been stirred up about every other day, it's not really doing much in there. Let me turn it on. And then we get that. We just stir it every couple of days to break up the mycelium. Otherwise you'll get a big mat growing in there. And keeping it broken apart means it's easier to take out later because you can use it. And I'll kind of explain that process a little bit too in a few minutes here. This is just going to be kind of introduction to what I've been doing for myself, for people who are interested that I know, and also just, you know, to learn is also to teach. So to be able to tell myself and tell each other what we're doing, we can learn along the way. So what I was saying about the contamination is I ended up trying to inoculate those grain bags and with those 2 syringes before I had everything else ready. And I put the syringes back in the fridge for about a week. When I came back to do all these liquid cultures and to do all the agar plates, yeah, those agar plates didn't come out very well. They were contaminated, completely contaminated with bacteria. And they still grew mycelium. I was still able to transfer those over to clean plates, and I think I still got that mycelium. And obviously the bags that I originally inoculated, you know, they came over just fine. So I still have the mycelium in some form, even if it's just a bag of mushroom grain spawn or even the whole mushroom. You know, I didn't lose that strain yet. But I definitely didn't get any agar plates from that first attempt, because when I opened up the syringe and closed it, even though I was in front of this flow hood, thought I was doing everything right, something must have contaminated both of those syringes. because the liquid culture jars I made from those syringes after I had reclosed the syringe and reopened it, you know, it was just bacteria. I can show you the plates in a few minutes here that were contaminated. So we'll just go through. You'll see this. This is a Italian oyster patty straw. This is one I've already harvested from, but as you can see, we still have no contamination. That crystal clear fluid and the floating mycelium, of course. A patty straw creates kind of an orange mycelium, I've noticed. Like if you pay attention later, you'll see that with the agar plates too. But I've already taken out about 100 milliliters of liquid culture from this, so I made 10 syringes out of this one jar. And these are small jars, obviously. You know, I'm just starting out with small stuff. And I made 3 jars. Okay? So I obviously have a lot of potential to expand just those 3 jars into many, many mushroom blocks. Now, this patty straw mushroom, you don't really grow that in mushroom blocks like you traditionally would. I'm not sure how I'm going to really grow that yet. It's all an experimentation thing as far as that goes. So we go up here every other day. We mix up the cultures. Here's some of the mycelium growing on the glass for an Elm oyster culture. Once again, we have that clear see-through fluid. And then we have your beautiful mycelium. And this jar is just popping with mycelium. You know, it's growing up the sides. Every time we stir it, a little bit of that liquid culture gets puffed up or pushed up on the side. And that mycelium starts growing up on the sides of the jar. Yeah, so you don't want to tilt your jars too much because that'll happen on your lids too, right? You know, I've never done any of this stuff, but it's kind of observational. And I've read a lot of stuff and watched a lot of YouTube videos, right? So that's important. And that's why I'm doing this, because I learn from learning from others, and hopefully this can help others too. As you can see, I got a lot of stuff up here. Not very clean right now. I mean, it's clean up here. This is all clean stuff. But it's kind of messy. I got my liquid culture supply, some lure locks, food coloring, dextrose, media jars. Got some pre-made, I shouldn't say pre-made, I got some reusable Petri dishes here that I made. Not a huge fan of these, but technically they work. I mean, I got some contamination issues here and there, but they work. I got these wide mouth jar lids. You know, it was like 20 bucks, I think, for 6 of them. Didn't use them yet. Made my own. Don't know why I bought them. But there you are. We got it. Now we're looking a little bit about what's in here. Let's turn the light on. And as far as this goes, here we go. So these are my grain spawn bags. I made these, let's see, in the 16th. Today's the 23rd. So I made it about a week ago now. I've mixed it up once. And you can see the mycelium is kind of growing through it pretty good. I'm not going to take the bags out and move them around. We're letting them grow here. And then we can talk about the Petri dishes if you want to see the Petri dishes here. We'll talk about my transfers I've done so far, my success, and the small amount of failures I have had so far. These are my other liquid cultures. I already mixed these up today. Oop. But you can kind of see, you know, they're clean. They're clear. I did have some contamination. Those same 2 strains, the tarragon and Korean oyster, which I had preemptively inoculated with and put the syringes back in the fridge, you know, all of those jars came out contaminated too. So I wasn't able to save any liquid culture. I was able to, these grain jars still grew mycelium. They're not these specific ones right here, but they're up here. There's these Korean oysters right here, in fact. These 2 bags right here. These came from that contaminated syringe. So I don't think it was contaminated when I first opened it. You know, it wasn't contaminated from the supplier. But I'm obviously, it was contaminated up here on this nice little flow hood I got going up here. Not sure how that happened. So, whenever I did those initial opening of the syringes, I created 3 for each strain here. You know, these are my Petri dishes. There's your Pohu oyster. This is Created April 3rd. Once again, today's the 23rd, so this is 20 days old. Fully colonized. There's another Pohu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these right. This is Pearl Oyster. This is actually from not from liquid culture, but from spawn. Or, I'm sorry, not from spawn. From spores. There's some more spores in here. They were spore syringes. This is lion's mane spore. You know, I don't have the best luck with keeping the condensation off there, but oh, there you go. You can see it in there. Probably not the best focus, I'm sure. And you can check out this patty straw. You know, this I didn't dye this different colors. You know, this orange here, I did not make this orange on my own. It's the patty straw making it orange compared to the other ones. Like these two agar plates here, it's the same agar recipe. The patty straw has managed to grow orange. Can't really see inside there, sorry. So, I'm saving this liquid culture for a friend. And giving him a Petri dish too. These are transfers that I made. This is the tarragon oyster. Transferred this once again because I had contamination and prematurely inoculated before I was ready with the other Petri dishes. And this is actually a piece of grain in here. So I just took a piece of grain out of the grain bag and threw it in here. I did that a few times. This one has 2 pieces of grain in it here. And it's growing, you know. It's hard to see with these pre-made, but you know, they look so nasty. These pre-made things. I mean, they work though. And like, oh, here you go. There's your contamination. You see those, see that bacteria in there? This is trash. I mean, technically you can take this, and there's white there. You can see in there is mycelium surrounded by bacterial colonies. This is my Korean oyster. And this is the same thing that it looked like inside the Petri dish. So maybe there is contamination in that bag. I don't know. But as long as I get one clean culture pulled away, it should be fine. And this is actually, what is this, tarragon? So this is a transfer from the tarragon oyster from an agar dish that I did make that was contaminated. Okay. So these are transfer. I mean, this looks clean to me. I didn't see any contamination in there. If you look in there, whatever you can see is very little, obviously, but it looks pretty nice. I don't know, though. I'll have to transfer it a couple times and see. It's kind of the rule of thumb here. Now we can talk about... Oh, sorry about that. Not sure how I did that. Okay. Now we can talk about these clones I did from a local mushroom grower. I just bought it at the grocery store. Shiitake. And that's growing. I don't see any contamination in there. It's actually growing up the walls of the jar. Oyster. This oyster is growing. Not really a lot of heavy growth covering the whole agar, but it's there. And we got a lion's mane in here with some pretty good growth. And I kind of like these jars. You know, obviously these are just canning jars. But this is kind of a handy way to do transfers or clones. Just have the jars ready to go. They're clean, they're contamination free. So those are all clones. Lion's mane, oyster, and shiitake. And then these are the contaminated plates that I transferred away from. So this is gonna be some gross stuff, guys. This is your bacteria right here. You can see there's definitely, I mean, I don't know what you can see, but the white stuff is mycelium. But you see all those dots? Those, I mean, I believe are bacterial colonies. So I've already transferred. You can see the little triangle I cut out there. I already transferred away from here. It's in one of these other jars. You know, and this is the Korean oyster. You can't really see the contamination on the camera, I don't think, but it's there. This one, I don't even think any mycelium grew on this one. This was also the Korean oyster. You know, this is just a bunch of bacterial colonies. I don't think I transferred away from this at all. This was just something I held on to just to see what would grow out of it. You know, a lot of this stuff's going to end up in the garbage, right? But if you can copy some, it's just like a copy in a file. Copy and paste, right? You can copy and paste the strain into the right condition where it's clean. You can use it later. So here's a couple examples of some liquid culture syringes I made. This is the patty straw. That's why it's not in the fridge. I found out the patty straw doesn't want to be refrigerated. So we just leave it in here. I don't really shake them up or anything. Don't know if I should. A couple of the original grain jars I used. This is another patty straw. I haven't used the grain yet because it's going to be growing in the heat outside. And it's not really the right time of year for that. Once again, it's experimentation. I live in the Midwest, so it gets pretty hot here and pretty humid. This stuff usually grows in, as far as I know, Asia, and it's much hotter there and much more humid for, you know, much of the day compared to here. So I don't know if I'll be even able to grow anything with patty straw. Just saw it and thought it was interesting. This is a Pohu oyster. You know, nothing special about this jar. It's just still here. And then we have these. So like this Korean was March 30th. This was the original batch I created. So this one's almost coming up on a month. So the 30th to the 23rd. It's about 24 days, I think. And it's got some good growth going throughout there. My thing is I'm not really sure when to open these bags up for fruiting conditions. You know, I'm kind of playing it by ear here. I don't know if these are considered 100% colonized. I would say not yet, right? I don't know though. And as we go left here, we have stuff that's older. Like this bag, I don't know what's going on with this bag because it was the same age as like these bags next to it, but only the top half would colonize, even though as you can see the grains are mixed throughout it. A couple days ago I mixed it again. But yeah, it's kind of not growing on the bottom still. Maybe it's too wet. You know, I was doing the measurements on some of these bags and there was one bag I know I messed up the water content of. And I think I ended up putting a little extra water in, so maybe that's the bag I messed up. I have no idea. Definitely a good theory though. And those are kind of my first bags I inoculated. And one of these bags is a pre-made. This bag here is a pre-made bag that I bought online. Don't even know the company I bought it from, but I didn't make that seal. This is probably coconut coir. There was some sort of grains in there. It wasn't birdseed, but it was oats and some other grain. I know it was 2 grains in there. And that was also colonized on March 30th with the Korean oyster. So I don't know. A month. Is it ready to harvest? Do I cut it open now? I have no idea. Maybe you guys can answer that for me. So we talked a little bit about transferring, about cloning, just kind of a little bit more about what I'm doing here. Zooming back out a little bit so you can see better. We'll talk about the tent briefly. You can see I have this is just a room in my house. That's a air conditioning and furnace vent back there, but I have a filter over top of it. That's why there's tape over it. The tent is just some 2x4s, some greenhouse plastic. I purchased a big old square greenhouse plastic for about $100. I don't know how long it was, but it was 12 feet wide. I want to say it was like 50 or 100 feet. I don't know which. You know, I got some zippers for the door on the top and the bottom. You know, right now the door just folds up inside, but it goes all the way across, you know, opens up like this. You can see it. Got 3 shelves in here. They're meant to be taller, but these shelves kind of unscrewed and worked out perfectly for the size of room I have, actually. And I think I could fit about maybe 70, maybe 80 mushroom blocks in here if I was just doing fruiting only in this area. You know, obviously right now this is my colonization area. This is kind of my whole mushroom setup in this one tent. This one room, really. You know, I remodeled this room in my house. It was carpeted earlier. That wall wasn't a wall. That door was actually not there either. It was just open space. This wall kind of stopped right here. You can probably see where the drywall is. I didn't do the perfect job of drywalling it. But I'll be setting up my ventilation to go. You know, I got some jars here, but I'll be setting up my humidification system right here. And the humidity going into the tent up here. That'll be in the next week or so. And on the other side of the tent down there in the corner, I'm going to have your ventilation going out. There's going to be like I have a 6-inch fan or 4-inch fan going to go back behind the tent. The ventilation going to the fan. Ventilation going to this wall. I'm just going to put a hole in this wall because this wall I created. There's no wires here. And then outside the wall, just outside this door here, there's a window. So I'll be sucking out the air from that side of the tent, around the back, and out the window. I'll be sucking in humidity, and fresh air to the tent through a humidity box right here, which is the House of Hydro. I think it's a 12. I'm not sure exactly how to say it, to be honest with you. It's right over here in a box somewhere, but it's the House of Hydro 12 Mister humidifier. Definitely overkill as far as I understand it for my setup, but I'm trying to start out small and grow without having to buy a bunch of extra stuff when I'm ready to grow. I might be buying stuff that is used for a room that's 3 times the size of my tent. But first of all, I don't really know if that's true or not. And second of all, what if I build a tent 3 times the size of my garage? Maybe it's worth doing that. Maybe it's just worth buying it now. And I got some of my other cultures in this mini fridge over here. Definitely if this wasn't a 1-room mushroom farm, I'd put the mini fridge somewhere else. It's putting a lot of heat into this room. But we're working with what we got in here. We got our Florida oysters. I haven't even looked at these since I made them about a week ago. I also have some of this good stuff, some of this cordyceps. And this is from terrestrial fungi. I've never grown cordyceps before, but I'm pretty inspired by what he's doing with them as far as growing them and breeding them, and I want to try it out. I obviously invested something right here, and this little kit right here is about $300 worth of cordyceps cultures. Was that worth buying all at once? Was that a good idea? I don't know. It's okay though. Don't matter. Oh, and that's obviously not what you want to do. Drop your syringes on the floor. Obviously want to be cleaner than that. But I've already used these syringes here. These are your blue oyster, pearl oyster, pink oyster. I got a couple different spores. That's another mistake I would say I made. I don't know why I bought spores in the first place. There's no reason to buy spores when you're starting out. Buy liquid culture if you can. That's the way to go. But I bought the spores, so I'm going to use them. Well, that's pretty much it. I did my bagging in another room, so that's not really part of the 1-room mushroom farm. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you about the flow hood a little bit. So this thing's pretty nice. I know it's not really a hood. People always get worked up about that. Your laminar flow system, right? Is it laminar flow? I don't know. Is it clean? Wow, that's still stirring. Whoops. Yeah, it's clean enough. If I was able to do all of this stuff, all this stuff was done in front of the flow hood, except for only one thing I didn't do in front of the flow hood, which was I tried to do some transfers from a Amazon purchased mushroom grow kit. I did some surgery on the bag because there was some mold. Flipped the bag over, cut it open. I did that on my kitchen table. I didn't want to bring the mold up here. And I used a alcohol flame, like a working flame, to try to keep the particles out. And I made about 5 of these tiny little pre-mades. Sorry about that. Matter of fact, one of the pre-mades is right here. So, use a little alcohol flame for that. It's right over here. So it's kind of a long, rambly video, but we're just getting started with this project. Wanted to show everybody what I'm doing. Anybody who's interested in following me. This is all stuff coming from somebody who's never done this before. I've never even done canning before. Operating a pressure cooker was something I had to learn how to do while I did this. My parents did canning, but I never really sat there and learned that you have to purge the air. And this one doesn't look very clean, but I think I already stirred this one. Pretty sure that's because I already stirred that one. Yeah, I think I'm getting into ones I've already stirred today on this one. So, yeah, look how foamy that one got. That's one I left stirring this whole video. But that'll just, the foam will disappear. Here, this one's not stirred yet. If this was contaminated, and you can kind of see the difference between an unstirred one and a stirred one, it's kind of the same idea. You can't see through that liquid right now. Well, that's because it's stirred. But even when it's not stirred, if it's contaminated with bacteria, you won't be able to see anything through that. And I know you can't like count the fins or anything, but you can see the fins through this liquid. If anybody's interested in recipes, instructions, I'd be glad to share my information with you. Just let me know in the comments what people are interested in. I'll make a video about any of this stuff people are interested about individually. I'll make a video about my experiences doing it. Like, if you're interested in hearing about how it was making the flow hood, I'll be glad to tell you about that. If you're interested on learning about how it is making all these little liquid culture jars and whether I think we should go with one culture jar that's a quart, or like a gallon, I mean, or if we want to go with all these small ones, right? I'll talk about that. If you want to talk about how to do the grain bags and what you think is best for mixing up the grains, I can talk about that too. All this stuff was done in a pressure cooker, 4 bags at a time for the blocks, 4 bags at a time for these. My plan is to take one of these grain bags and use it to make 4 of the mushroom substrate blocks. And I'll do one of those every week or every 2 weeks and kind of get a good supply going. Right now I got this whole setup. Quite a few blocks are going to be growing at the same time. Well, I don't really necessarily want that right now. So I'll kind of space out the next harvest, the next cycle as it goes. But that's my introduction to my mushroom farm. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I encourage you to ask me any questions or leave any of your input behind in the comments. I want to be part of this community. I want to make everybody come together. Show that you can do stuff even if you don't have very much space, even if you don't have that much money. This didn't cost that much to put together. If you're just trying to do something for fun, or if you're just trying to have access to something not everybody has access to. I mean, how often can you just go to the grocery store and pick up one of 8 different varieties of oyster mushrooms? I mean, a lot of grocery stores don't even have these types of mushrooms in the first place. And just for me to have that personally makes it worth it. Even if I don't sell a single mushroom, I'm not really necessarily trying to make this a business. But if it happens that way, I'll definitely take whatever way the wind blows and take that direction, So that's it. This is Dave signing off. Hope you enjoy my videos.